Hey there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dee, and if you are new here, please subscribe to the channel. Today I'll be taking you through the process of getting together this skirt. I put up the cutting tutorial in my previous video, so do well to watch that before you come to watch this one. So if you watched the previous video, you see that I already went ahead to sew my bias down. I gave it a good press and I have fine strips of bias with me. So what I'll be doing is I'll be intertwining same colors, same bias colors together to give me my twist. I'll be making use of the upper part of the skirt first and the lining. So I started by leaving 3 inches of stitching allowance because when I was cutting I left 2 inches, so that extra 1 inch is just for space for the bias to sit, and then I marked another 1 inch all the way. I'll be giving spaces of 1 inch across each bias. Every bias will have each interval of 1 inch. So I did this on the lower part of the skirt, that's the knee part, the part facing the knee, and you can give as much space as 2 inches or 3 inches depending on how wide you want the spaces of the ropes to be. So I'm making use of 1 inch for both the space and for twisting the ropes. So here I already started putting about 4 different colors. I'm going to mix the colors all the way. As you can see, there is a difference of 1 inch across each bias. So let's go ahead and do all the other colors. I'm using my pin to hold this down so it doesn't move while I'm stitching, but if you know what you are doing, then you don't really need to hold it down. As you can see, I didn't hold the rest down just to show you how I'm going to be fixing them. So I just did this all across and you can see that the colors are different. So yes, I'm going to pick my lining fabric and place it on top. So I'm going to face it right side, facing right side, and then stitch the lower parts down. After stitching the lower parts down, I went ahead to top stitch the bias tape on it so it sits firm. Go ahead and iron it properly so it lies well, and this is what we have. So the next thing we're going to be doing is to intertwine the ropes. I stitched the other parts of the lining, that's the waist part, holding it up so it doesn't shift so much. So you can pick up your colors one by one and intertwine it. If you have another set of pins, you can use them, but you can just do this while you are sewing. So this is just a representation of what it's supposed to look like. You twist the same colors on the same colors of the bias that I've already stitched down. On the lower part of the skirt, I'm also going to go ahead and mark the same space I left for the upper part on the lower part. So by the time I'm done stitching, it comes out just below itself and is not twisted. I tried changing the colors of the bias and this is how it looks, so you can also do that for your own tutorial, for your own practical, but for this one we'll be making use of the same colors all through. So for this skirt, on the front piece I have about 11 bias altogether that I've stitched down. If you are of a smaller size, you definitely use smaller amounts of bias. So yes, this is what we have, and I'm going to pick up the lower parts and show you how I'm going to stitch it together. So I've gone to pick my lower part of the skirt, and I have the fabric and I have the lining. Please make sure you label your lower parts. Label where it's facing upwards and where it's facing down, so that you don't end up stitching the intertwined bias on the lower part. This part can be very tricky, so please emphasize. I'm emphasizing on labeling your fabric. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick my bias. I'm going to label all the marks I want on the lower part. So I'm going to leave exactly 3 inches by the edge for sewing allowance, and then mark 1 inch interval for all the stitches. So please make sure that the bias is on the same line as the upper part when you place the skirt together, so you don't want to have this slanting effect. So yes, go ahead and mark your 1 inch all the way. So this part is quite taxing, but what I did was I removed all the ropes that I intertwined, and I just intertwined them as I sewed. So while I sew, I pause, I intertwine, I sew, I pause, I intertwine. I kept doing that till I was done with the lower part. So you are going to want to fold it in the other way around. You are going to put the lining on top and then the bias tape in between, and then just sew. When you are done sewing, you are going to go ahead and top stitch all the way down, just like you did for the upper part, but this time for the lower part facing down. So I'll go to my machine, stitch that, and show you what I have. Ta-da! This is what we have. After I was done stitching the lower part, this is what it looks like. And yes, so go ahead, iron it properly. You can see where I top stitched at the back. Yes, I went ahead to fold the other part as well. Remember, I didn't leave any extra folding inch, so I folded exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that edge. I'm going to cut out the excess fabric and sew it in, and then I'm going to iron it. You can stitch the both sides to keep it clean, but I'll just be stitching the lower part for this tutorial. After sewing the lower part down, I'm going to iron it, and then let's go to the back. This is the back pattern. Please remember to identify your fabric, the upper part, the lower part, the sides facing down, the sides facing the sides, as many parts as you can label as possible, because it's very important. The back is quite confusing. It's more confusing than the front part, so please make sure that you label the parts of your fabric. So I started with the upper part. As you can see, I gave 2 inches for the zipper allowance, and then on the other side I left 3 inches for the sewing in allowance. So the same thing I did in front, I'm going to be leaving 1 inch of stitching allowance in between each bias. So as you can see, I'm just going ahead to mark 1 inch. After marking my 1 inches all the way, I'm going to place my bias just the way I did in front, and then stitch for the upper part. While stitching the upper part, I'm going to close in the zipper part and then hem the lower part and turn it in as well. I don't have to sew in the waistline because I'll be making use of a band, so that part can be left open. I picked the other part of the skirt, which is the right side, and I marked the same 2 inches for zipper allowance and then 1 inch in between each bias. And then on the other side for the sewing allowance, I made use of 3 inches. After pinning it down, I picked up the lining and I'm going to sew it inwards. I'm going to sew it inside just like I did. I did right sides facing right sides. So you pick up the other side and put the lining as well. You sew on the lower part where there is bias, you stitch by the side where there is zipper, and yes, that's basically it. So after stitching the part where there is zipper, you follow the line down and stitch the lower part. Then when you are done, you top stitch. This is what the back looks like after stitching and ironing. So as you can see, we've not inserted our dart yet, so you want to make sure you do that by measuring your nipple to nipple measurements and then marking 5 inches from the waistline downwards. Remember, we'll be adding additional waistband, so 7 inches is enough for your dart altogether. So let's go ahead and fix the lower part. The same method I used for the front is the same method I'm going to use for the back. I'm going to be marking the inches on the lower part of the skirt and then I'm going to fold it in, then top stitch. This is it after we're done stitching the lower part and the slit aspect of the skirt. You want to do the other side and then join the back pieces together. So I'll be using the same method I used for one part of the skirt for the other side of the skirt. Went ahead to close up the slits, inserted my darts, close up the mid part of the skirt, and yeah, our skirt is coming out nicely. So the next thing we're going to do is to join the back and the front pieces together. You can do an invisible joining, you can join it however way you wish. So I'll just be doing the normal method. I'll be placing the back and the front piece together, right sides facing right sides, and then inserting my measurements and just sewing along. This is what it should look like after you are done inputting your measurements and just basically fitting the skirt. So the upper part is left open, and that's the last part we're going to be working with. I've gone ahead to fix my zip at the back, so I'll be making use of this band that I created earlier. I've ironed my interfacing, so I'm going to close up the edges and join it to the skirt. This is what you should have when you're done. I've inserted my band, and yes, our skirt has come together nicely. So make sure you give it a good press, and yes, that'll be all for this tutorial. See you guys in my next video. Bye.